I know, I think we know Adobe, they acquired their
Base
software,
software.
right?
Correct, that's
Yeah.
absolutely right. Okay, let me get started with this one. Okay, so just a little bit of overview here. And in case you get time today, you can also look at my demo recording where I've spoken a little bit about the CMS tools, what is a CMS and all those basic concepts. I've also spoken a
Oh,
little bit about the Adobe Marketing Cloud where we have 6 solutions and AEM is the CMS tool. Okay.
okay.
So talk about this history here. Okay, now you know what? We will talk about the history a little later on. Okay. So first of all, there may be little confusion around the naming. What is the CQ, AEM? Some people call it Adobe CQ. Okay, it's all one and the same. So version 5.6 onwards was called Adobe Experience Manager. So Adobe acquired Day Software when it was in 2010 end. That was when 5.5 was there. So 5.6 onwards they called it as AEM. Okay. Now, how to distribute AEM, right? So, how does AEM get deployed in real time? Okay, that is what we need to understand. Now, the entire AEM comes as a jar file. Okay, there are two ways to deploy AEM. Okay, so now whenever we talk about AEM, it's used to build a web application. Now, when I say it's used to build a web application, we need a kind of a web server that starts, right? Because we know that all web applications are deployed on top of web server. The first kind of model is AEM runs as a standalone instance, which means I get this jar file. Okay, this is a jar and a license. So this license, right? So you can start this jar file only if you have this license, which would have a customer ID and a license product version here. So now whatever I'm using is the training one. In case you guys get into production, you would have this customer name here. Whoever is a customer, they would have a license. Okay. Now, there is a naming convention for this jar. There's an Adobe recommendation to name this jar file. So AEM, so when you start AEM, it can run in two ways. I think you guys are aware. It can run as author and it can run as publish. So any CMS system would have this one. So if I talk about author, so this author instance is an edit only mode. I mean it's an edit mode where authors can log in. Right? When authors, the typical job of a website, I mean when you talk about the different tasks in website development, one is to build the website. When I say build the website, create reusable pages. Okay, and every page in turn is comprised of components, and these are all reusable components. So, for example, like Kavita said, you have a logo component, you have a text, and all these things. Right? So these are all out of the box components. When I say out of the box, these are components that come in when you start the server. So Adobe have built reusable components to reduce development efforts. So as developers, right, our job would be to create components, which means we need some technology stack to create the components and all of that, which we want to understand. Okay. As developers, our jobs would be to create reusable components, create an authoring framework for those. So when I say authoring framework, so let's say let's open up Google Code 4.0. And as you guys would already know this, I use admin, which is a super root user to log in. And admin has privileges to do anything that he wants. So now, let's say these geometric sites that you see, right? This is a very good starting point for AEM developers. So these are fictitious websites created by Adobe. Why have they created this? This is just to demonstrate what is available. This is to demonstrate how to model the content. This is to demonstrate the best naming conventions, how to name your website. Right? So there is a lot of significance with this geometrics. Now let's say I open up a page. The moment you start the server, you would see geometrics coming up automatically. Now Right? So typically the job of author, right, is to create these pages. So these are all the different pages available. My website is a collection of pages, and each page in turn is comprised of these reusable components. So if you look at this, there is a carousel component, this is a text component, and this is an image component, and this is an interactive. So when you say AEM, it allows you to build rich internet applications, rich interactive applications, which means in case I want to edit this, all I need to do is just drag and drop a different image, that's done. Or there's also a dialog that comes up here. So as developers, we will be creating these dialogues here. So these are called dialogues, and within these dialogues, so let's say I open up this text. These are called as widgets. So this is the first widget, this is the second widget, this is the third widget. These are tabs here. As developers, we need to make it authorable, right? So our job is to create these components, is to create the dialogues and so on. Okay? This is what we're going to do. Now, let's straight away get started here. So I was talking about the starting of the AEM instance. So the recommendation to name your jar file is to say CQ-run mode. Now what do you mean by the run mode? Okay. So AEM can run in two kinds of modes. One is the author and the second one is the publish. Okay. Now all I need to do is, and now what is this publish instance? Now in case this everything is editable here, and the end user, right, typically is going to see whatever is there on the publish. Okay. This is the publish mode, this is the author mode. So this publish mode is a read-only mode, which means none of the components and none of the content is going to be editable. So this is a read-only mode. Now, how do the same jar, right, can work either as author or as publish, just by changing the name here. In case I make it a CQ-publish hyphen, the other convention to remember here is publish instances run on odd numbered ports. Okay, so if you look at this, let's go here. Yeah, so I've written this somewhere here. Okay, publish instances run on odd numbered ports. So let me just give me a minute. Okay, so there are two kinds of modes. One is author and the publish. If it is author, right? So if you look at this, P here signifies the port number 4502. Okay. In case you want to have multiple instances running on a single mission, that is also possible. All you need to do is change the port numbers. So parallelly, you could have two instances, three instances up and running. The next thing is, in case I want to start my server as publish, all I would need to do is CQ publish. Okay. Run mode, I'm making it as publish hyphen P. It's a convention to have odd number ports for publish instances P4503 dot jar. Okay. So this is how you would start your publish. Now, what is the memory recommendation? When is it going to be effective, or when is it going to have right performance? Right? You need to allocate at least 3 GB of RAM for your AEM instance. So it's recommended to have 8 GB of overall RAM, where your AEM occupies close to 2.5 GB of RAM. Okay? So the recommended memory is to have 8 GB. And in production, of course, people have allocate more RAM. It could be 16 GB, 32 GB, depends, right? So the minimum is 8 GB. Now, what are the three ways of starting the AEM? Okay, now whatever I'm talking about is a standalone installation, which means I'm doing it on my machine. And if you look at this, there are two ways again. Okay, this infrastructure, to maintain the AEM infrastructure, there are two ways. One is on-premise. When I say on-premise, right, within my enterprise, I will have servers on which I'm going to deploy this AEM, and I have my own admin team. So the job, so if you look at the different stakeholders within an AEM application, you have developers, you have authors, you have administrators, you have project managers, and so on. Right? The job of an admin is to maintain, is to deploy, maintain your environment. When I say deploy, initial setup, first thing is going to do the initial setup of my AEM instance. When I say deploy, so you may have release cycles where you want to push in code on every release. So your administrators are going to deploy the code and maintain, instead of maintain, let's say monitor. Usually the production environments, monitor the production environment. Any question on this? Okay. Kavita and what is, sorry, I missed your name. I forgot your name. Can you repeat it again?
Oh, it's Gopi.
Hey, Gopi. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, On-premise, this is an on-premise. The second is, so some clients feel that, okay, I don't want to have anything on-premise. I don't have administrators who can do that. So you can, Adobe have something called AMS, Adobe Managed Services, where AEM is deployed on Adobe's cloud and all you need to do is subscribe. So you get AEM as a service. So Adobe themselves are going to do all these admin stuff, setting up the dispatcher and all of that stuff, setting up the dispatcher, monitoring the production environments, deploying everything they're going to take care. So you don't even need to worry about anything. But again, this comes at a cost. So Adobe have their own cloud. This is called Adobe Managed Services. I'm sure you have explored this. So how is your infrastructure, guys? Do you have an on-premise or is it a cloud?
So I think in our POC environment, I think is on-premise
Okay.
at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
yeah, so we're able. So we have like admin access.
Okay.
So they provided us with that.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I think the way it's we have it right now, we have the publisher and author instance on one box
Mm-hmm.
and the dispatcher on another.
Exactly, that's right. Okay. So we'll talk about
But
dispatcher and all these architectures, okay,
okay.
as we progress. Now, next thing, okay. So the first way of starting the server is, I think you would have already done this. All you need to do is just go and double click the server. You would need a JDK, right? You would need JDK 1.7 or higher, and you just have to double click. Automatically you would see a CRX quick start getting generated here the moment you double click the server, and this is your progress bar here, and my instance took 137, close to 2 minutes to get started, right? So this is the first way of starting the server. Just double click this and your JDK is going to unpack this jar file, and automatically I see that all these things get created. Okay. Now what happens on the backend? So you have a web server that gets started the moment you double click this. So it's the Jetty web server that's getting started on the backend. Okay, I've already added that here. So Jetty is the web server that version 6 onwards has been using Jetty as a web server. However, when you started version 5.6.1, any idea which web server was used? Version 5.6.1 and older versions use Jetty as the web server. I mean used CQSE. So this is called CQ Servlet Engine. And they somehow found out that Jetty is more optimal in terms of performance, in terms of page load times, and Jetty has been used as a website. So this is the product design. So older versions is CQ Servlet Engine. Now you may ask me a question. Okay, when I start the instance, Jetty is starting. But is it possible to deploy AEM on top of my own app server? Let's say I have a JBoss, or let's say I have a Tomcat. Yes, that is also possible. In such cases, for you to deploy AEM on top of an existing app server, right, you would, what can you deploy in an app server? I mean, you would need a WAR file, right? So you get this jar, whatever you get as a jar, you get the AEM distribution as a WAR file. So all you need to do is, in case your client insists that we already have a app server, okay, I've added the document. Let me share that here. Okay, yeah, here you go. Okay. So it is also possible to deploy AEM on a running application server like JBoss or any of these. All you need to do is you need to get the WAR file. Okay, I do not have the WAR file with me. However, based on your license, Adobe are going to give you a WAR file, and the steps to do that are given here. So if you look at this, right, you may have different app servers, but the one common thing is you would get AEM as a WAR file distribution. Let's assume I have a JBoss 7.1 with me. Okay. The steps are mentioned here. So you need to set up the server and deploy this. Okay. This is clear, right? You can deploy it as a jar or as a WAR. So 90% of the times it's a jar file. Few clients who may insist, in case they have a lot of EJB beans and all those kinds of things, people insist on app servers, but it's a legacy way of working. So most of it is, but this point is clear, right? Any questions? Yeah, Kavita, you were saying something?
Yeah, we are good.
Good. Okay.
Basically, we are also running as a jar file.
As a jar file, okay. However, in case your client changes or something, it's good to know this, right?
Okay. Sorry, I missed your name. Know your name?
Hey, my name is Rishi.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no. Now, so both of you are based out of the US or you are in India? Guys, are you there? Hello, are you able to hear me? Kavita, Gopi, are you able to hear me? I think you're on mute. Hey, you guys there? Kavita, are you there? Okay. Okay. Gopi, are you there? Okay, I think Gopi has a problem. Anyway, I'll continue. I'll hand over the video again. Now, the second way to do it is, are you aware of this second way of starting the server?
I just know only
Okay, just not double click. The second way, to, whenever you have
as
any,
a jar file.
yeah, whenever you have any jar file, okay, the way you extract it is, the command to extract it is java minus jar, okay. You pass the command on the command prompt saying java minus jar and provide the name of the jar file. Even here I'm going to do the same
Okay.
thing. Okay. I would say java minus jar and provide the name of the jar, which is cq hyphen upper hyphen 4502.jar. However, I can go and pass in, let's say when I start the server, when you work on Java, you may encounter out of memory errors and all these things. In case you encounter out of memory errors, you need to allocate more heap. So in Java, we have the heap memory and the stack. Right? So all the Java objects and everything will be stored on the heap. So it's always good to allocate more memory on the heap. So you can provide heap size here. So XMX stands for heap size. When I say XMS, it stands for minimum heap size. Okay. Now whenever you want to add arguments to this command, all you need to do is just add a minus here and the name of the argument. So minus XMS denotes minimum heap size, minus XMX denotes maximum heap size. Hey, feel free to interrupt if you have any questions or anything, something, okay, if you have, something is not clear, indicate it right away.
Yeah, sure.
Great.
Yeah, sure.
So now, if I want to allocate, when I'm starting the server, let's say I want to allocate 1 GB of memory. So all I need to do is, I need to provide this parameter here, saying 1024, which is 1 GB, and start the server. There is another area of memory called permanent generation. In Java, you have heap size, you have stack memory, and you have one area called permanent generation. So what is the job of this permanent generation? So this permanent generation holds information about all the classes, methods, object in your JVM. So it's a reflection of your JVM itself. Okay. Now it holds information about all the classes, methods, objects in your JVM class loader, which means imagine a large enterprise organization. You would have thousands of objects, thousands of garbage collection happening at the same time and all of that kind of thing. So again, there are chances that we might encounter out of memory errors if you have permanent generation set to low values. So it's always recommended to have at least 256 and recommended is to have over a GB of memory for the permanent generation and at least 2 GB for the heap, okay, which are recommended thing. Of course, in production, depending on the volume of your content and volume of the pages on your website, you can allocate this memory. So memory tuning is left to you. Okay. So this is how you add it. So this is the second way of starting the server. Now one more very important point. Okay. How do you shut down the server here? Never go and close this button. You never use this button. Always use this toggle button here, so that you're going to gracefully terminate all the threads. Okay. Now that is how we have been doing it, right?
Yeah, actually, I just closed the
Yeah. Never do that. Your repository, I mean,
command.
your
I never
instance
pressed
may
the off.
become. Sorry, Pita, I missed you. What were you saying?
Like I usually I just close the button. I never used to.
Yeah, when you close it, your instance is going to get corrupt and sometimes it may not start properly the next time onwards. So always do a graceful termination of the server. Okay. Now,
Okay.
how to start the second mode? All you need to do is open up a command prompt. On the command prompt, okay, I'm going to copy this command. And have you worked on Java, J2W, the servlets, JSP? Are you aware of those concepts? Okay.
C and Java. I was very long back, but not much. But I'm just getting
Okay, I'll let you know I'll let you know a few topics which you may have to brush up your skills on. Okay, it would be great if you can spend time on those.
okay. Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Please provide any useful help. So I'll just.
Yeah, at the end of the session, I'm going to list out a few topics, and you can brush up on
Okay.
those.
Yeah, that will be great.
Right. So now, how to start the instance here? Second way, all I need to do is copy this command and paste. Okay. Of course, this runs only when you have your JDK set up. Now, first time when you start the server, it may take a couple of minutes or even close to 3 minutes. Subsequent times, the server startup time is going to reduce. Okay. Now, let's say your server is not starting properly or all those things. How to debug, how to troubleshoot my server if it is not starting properly? All you need to do is your AEM server to monitor the server. my AEM is starting because there are 400 odd OSGI bundle. We don't know what OSGI bundle is. Blindly, when you want to debug the AEM server, go to this particular URL here. This is called as the Felix console, which we'll discuss soon. Now here, let's open up this. Okay, so once the server is starting here, okay, there are some 452 odd bundles. Okay, we don't know what a bundle is yet. Now only when you see all the 400 bundles, and every bundle, if I see here, there is a status. The trick here is only when all the bundles are in the active status, it's going to be, your server is going to get started properly. So if you look at this, initially it was 300 something, now more bundles are getting into the active state. Now again, if I refresh, right, 434 bundles, and when you try to open up any URL, now I see the login page. When I see this login page, it means my AEM has started properly, which means now if I refresh this, okay, I see that all 452 bundles are in the active state. The moment you start the instance, right, I see that there is something happening with respect to these OSGI bundles. So we don't know what a bundle is, okay, which we are going to talk about. This is the blind way of troubleshooting your instance. In case you see that no, only 200 are there or only 220 are there, in that case it means your instance is correct. Okay, I'll tell you more about this. Next, this is the second way of starting the server, where I use the command prompt. Now again, in case you want to terminate the server, okay, never use this close button again. Your instance is going to turn corrupt. Rather, do a graceful termination where all the forks and the threads are going to get released properly. So just say Control C. Now when I do a Control C here, it says shutdown hook. It's going to shut down the hooks, waiting for it to exit. Right? You see, it forked all the JVM processes and it exited. Right? So this is the second way of starting the server as well as terminating the server. Hey, Gopi, are you in? Are you in the call? Okay. Okay. The Kavita, is this clear? The second way of starting and stopping? Kavita, are you there?
Yeah,
Okay,
sorry, I was
okay.
on mute, so I did not.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
it's
thought
clear.
Gopi is practicing his piano or something.
Oh, no, no, no. I was testing my audio. Okay, now it's working fine.
I
Sorry.
see. So you missed out a few minutes. Anyway, I will share this recording and you can catch up on that. I was talking about the second way of installation.
Okay.
So the third way, okay, now we saw two ways to start the server. What is the third way? Now first time, whenever you start the server, we see that there is a CRX quick start folder that gets generated. Now when I go to the bin folder, so this bin folder with CRX quick start got automatically generated when I started my instance, and bin folder has the start and the stop scripts. Now AEM can run on Windows machine, AEM can run on Linux, it can run on any, so because AEM is built on top of Java, it can work on any OS. Now if you want to deploy AEM on a Windows machine, okay, all you would need to, the third way of starting the server is Windows supports running batch files. So just double click on the start.bat here. Okay. When you double click on the start.bat, you would see this is the console, startup console, starting instance on 4502. It's registering some bundles here. Now again the same thing, how to troubleshoot this, just go here and refresh your OSGI console. This is part of the OSGI console. I've added this URL on your document. Initially, I see 95 bundles active, and when I try to access some URL, let's say site admin 4502/site admin. Okay, I see that nothing is found. Right? It's not found. Now, when I refresh again, I would see initially 95 bundles. I told you all the bundles need to be active for the server to start up. Now, the more bundles have gone to the active state. So, if you look at this, I can sort these. Every bundle has an ID. If I click on this, it's going to sort by the ID. And every bundle has a status. Right? We don't know what a bundle is in depth. Okay, we'll look at that in the future. Now 219, when I refresh, it says startup in progress. Okay. Now let me refresh again. This is how you troubleshoot. You will know which bundle is not working fine and all of that stuff. Okay. Now 369 bundles in the active state. Refresh doesn't work. So only when all the 452 get into the active state will my instance run properly. Now if I refresh, okay, more bundles in the active state, nothing yet. So yeah, of course the startup takes close to 1.5 minutes. So we need to wait. Now if I refresh again, yeah, 434. The wait is coming to an end. Refresh again. Right? All 452 bundles active. Now if I say site admin, right? Do you see the console loading up here? Right? It works. So the first level of troubleshooting is you go and check the OSGI bundles. Now even after this, if your instance doesn't work, okay, before even talking about the troubleshooting aspect, so now again, in case let's assume I'm deploying on a Linux server for my production instance. We know that batch files don't work on Linux machines. So there is a startup script for the Linux machines. All you need to do is open the start file here and you would see a bash script already written. You don't need to do anything. Okay, you look at this is the bash script. So this is the file that you would use on a Linux machine. And this is the file that we are using on the Windows machine. Okay. Now let's say you want to change the port number and all of that. All you need to do is instead of 4502, go and make it 4504. And let's say instead of author you want to run it on publish, just change the CQ colon run mode here, CQ underscore run mode here. And in case you want to allocate more memory for your heap or more memory for the permanent generation, you can change any of these tuning startup parameters. You can tune these parameters. Okay. So this is the significance of the start.bat. So this is the third way of starting the server. Now, once the server starts, right, in case I want to stop the server, never do use this close button. Right? We always need to do a graceful termination of the server. So what I would do here is go, in case you use the start.bat file, there's a stop.bat file. Just double click on the stop.bat. Okay. The stop.bat is going to stop your AEM instance. Okay. So it's listening to a shutdown code. Okay, it's listening to a shutdown job, and just give it about 20-30 seconds and it's going to terminate. Okay. So these are the three ways of starting the server. Now what do you think is the best way to start the server? Double clicking or running by Java minus jar or using the backend? What do you think is the answer for this?
I think through command line.
Through command. Okay, what is the reason?
I don't know the.
Yeah, so the idea here is on the command line, you're right. The idea with the command line is you can allocate the startup and the stop parameters, okay, during the startup. What is the limitation with this third way? The limitation with this third way is this bin folder is available under your CRX quick start folder. And when does the CRX quick start folder get generated? Only when you start the server by double clicking or by running the command line. Okay, which means first time you should have started the server in the first two ways, and second time onwards you could use the standard pattern. Okay, so what you said is absolutely right. I could use the second name where I can set initial heap memory and all those things. Okay, next. Any questions on this?
Okay, so one quick question. So the first time when you started, right, you said you're going to run the command line, right, to extract the jar, and then we get this folder structure.
Correct.
So let's say we use author in
Okay.
this case, and then we run the bat file. If you go to bin, and let's say we modify that to publisher, what changes?
Okay, the thing is when you change it to publisher, it will still run as the author because all these bundles that have got loaded and everything changes for a read-only mode. So it will
Oh,
still
okay, okay.
continue to run as author.
Okay, got it.
So you need to have separate folder structures. The CRX start whatever loads on the first time is what you're going to show.
Okay.
Okay. Next.
Want to run as a two instances, so I'll just copy CQ author, then I'll rename it to publisher and change the port. Is that how you
Exactly.
need to do for the?
That's all you need to do. Okay. Or in case you want to run another author instance, copy this to another folder and instead of 4502 make it 4504 so that you can have both the instances running as author at the same time.
Okay.
So you cannot have two instances running on the same port.
Okay.
Next. Now, this is about starting the instance, okay? Now, how to troubleshoot the instance? One is you go to the system console. This Felix is just a Java. Okay, now let's understand the architecture. I'm sure you guys would have explored the architecture. Would you like to talk about it?
Yes, yeah. Let's talk about that.
Okay, so how is the data storage happening? Any idea?
It's a NoSQL database.
Okay, it's a NoSQL. Any other answers? Okay.
Mm,
That's perfect. So not knowing anything is the best way to learn AEM because when you have some assumptions, that is when confusions arise. Okay, here the perfect step. Okay, now what we're going to do is let's talk about a typical Java J2W application. In a Java J2W application, where does the data storage happen? It would have any relational database, right, which would have rows and columns. So these are tables, and every table has rows and columns. And let's assume I'm working on Amazon.com, which has a JSP as a front end. This would use a MVC model, let's say, a model view controller. Okay. Forget about model view controller. You have one JSP, and when I fire this JSP, this is the view. When I fire this JSP, I would invoke, let's assume I will invoke a servlet. That servlet connects to this database. Okay. How do you connect a servlet to a database? By using a JDBC. Now when I use JDBC, I'm going to query this database, right? And once I query the database, I'm going to fetch the result set and display it on my front end. Typically, this is how a normal Java application works. Now, how to establish the connectivity of my Java to database is through JDBC connector. And I'm using a database storage. In AEM, most important thing is how is the storage layer happening? We know that AEM is also used to build websites. How is the storage layer happening in AEM? Okay. Very important question. So let me add that here. AEM architecture. Now, there is no concept, very important first thing, you need to unlearn database, no concept of database.
So it's just a file system, I would imagine.
Something close, not even a file system, okay, we'll talk about it. No database, then how is the data getting stored? Okay. Now AEM, for the data storage, okay, AEM uses a hierarchical model, for storage, something similar to your Unix machine. Okay, so in Unix, how is the hierarchy? You would have a root node. Root node in turn would have child nodes. Child in turn may have other child nodes. Right? So parent and the children concept. So you are establishing a hierarchy. In AEM, for the storage, we use something called JCR. Okay. What is this JCR? JCR stands for Java Content Repository. Okay. Now in the Java Content Repository, right, when I say hierarchical model for storage, we have the root node, which will be the parent of everything. The root node is a slash. The root node in turn will have child nodes. Okay. So you're going to see a hierarchy established here. Now what is a node? We don't know yet. Okay. What is this Java Content Repository? In a Java Content Repository, data is stored in the form of nodes and properties. Okay, very important. Data is stored in the form of nodes and properties. So what is a node? A node is a unit for storage. Okay. How can I map the node to my database? You can assume a node to be something like a table, and properties, right? Every node has associated properties. What is a property? We don't know. Every node has associated properties. Okay. What do you mean by property? A property is a simple key value pair. A property is a key value pair. Okay. Now, unless we see this, it may not be clear. Now, what is this JCR? Okay. JCR is a Java Content Repository, okay, which is fine. It is a hierarchical model for storage. Okay. AEM uses JCR. So JCR is a spec. It's a specification. So specification is like a protocol which is like an interface in Java, okay, which means it has a set of rules, which means if I have an interface, I need an implementation, right? Now JDBC is like a specification. Now what I may require when I have JDBC is I need people who implement it, like the type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, right? We need implementations. So which implementation of JCR does AEM use? Which implementation of JCR does AEM use? Now when I say a spec, it's also going to have a version number. So JSR 283, every spec has a version. So AEM uses JSR 283 spec. And which implementation does AEM use? AEM uses Apache, so it uses open source technologies, Apache Jackrabbit Oak and CRX. CRX stands for content, it's Adobe's own implementation of JCR. Adobe's implementation of JCR is called CRX. CRX stands for Content Repository Extreme. Okay. Any questions till this point?
We are
No,
good.
I'm good.
Good. Now, this is the implementation that AEM uses, which is fine. Next, how to view these nodes and properties is the next question. I told you every node has associated properties, and a property is a key value pair, and a property has a data type. Property has a data type. Now, how do I explore my repository is the question. How do you guys remember the URL? Okay. So the URL is localhost 4502 slash CRX.
CRXD.
Exactly. Yeah, you already know that. Now I'm going to do this. So there are two ways to use it. This is the first way. What is the second way? Or 4502. Hey guys, you will hear me?
Yeah, we could
Yes,
hear you.
now we are able to.
Okay, I think I
Now it's
lost the
okay.
audio. Okay. So
So,
CRX, I can either use CRX DE or CRX Explorer. So CRX DE, CRX Explorer is a little lightweight compared to the CRX DE. So let me show you both. All you need to do is disable my proxy. Oh, you know what? I just shut down my server. Okay, so by the time this gets started, so which part of India are you guys from? Gopi?
sorry, what was that?
Which part of India are you from?
Oh no, I'm from Sri Lanka.
Oh, you're from Sri Lanka? Okay,
Yeah.
and okay, I think I
Okay.
must be losing you. Okay, so let's log in here. Okay. Now, if you look at this, right, this is the node storage that I was talking about. So these are all the nodes available. So this is a node. Everything is a node here in JCR. Let me add. This is a very important point again. Everything is a node in JCR. Okay. Now if you look at this is a node. This folder, whatever you see, this icon here, small folder, that is also a node. And the point I was trying to say is, every node, this is the window that shows you the properties associated to this node. Okay. A node, this is the root node. Everything starts with a root. This is the hierarchy. Apps. Apps has a child called Citrix. The parent of Citrix is apps. The parent of apps is root. Now I want three levels below the root. There is root apps, Citrix, components. Okay. Now every node has associated properties. Property is nothing but a simple key and a value here. Key and a value, key and a value. And every property has a type here. Okay. This is the point I was trying to make. Now this is what I've added here. A property is a key value. Any questions on this?
No, so
Yeah.
far it's okay.
So we would be creating whenever, now I want to show you something very interesting. Yeah, Kavita, you had something to ask? All right. Okay, great. So now, let's say I see a page. Okay. Now I feel that instead of strategic consulting, I want to change the content. So all I need to do here is, instead of strategic consulting, let's say strategy. development. Okay. Now when I want to change a content, what exactly happens, how the content changes, what happens in the background, we're going to understand that. The moment I say OK here, right, okay, I've been signed out here, so let's log in back. Instead of strategic consulting, let's say strategic development. Okay. Now when I say this, what exactly happened, right? So this is a page. Now if I look at the URL here, okay, I see that localhost 4502, server name, port number. When I copy this path, right, I copy everything starting with this root after the CF. What is the CF hash? Any idea, guys?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay, so the CF indicates a content finder here. So every page, this is called as a content finder, which holds all the DAM assets. When I say DAM, DAM stands for Digital Asset Management, which has your images, videos, documents, PDFs, and so on. In case I remove this CF hash, this window that you see here goes away. So let me remove this. Okay. Now if you open up the page, you will see that this sidekick disappears. I mean, the left content finder disappears. Okay. That is the significance of the content finder. Okay. It's used to add the images. It's a pointer to my digital assets, so that it's easy for the authors to add it here. And in case you see the content finder here, okay, all I need to do is CF hash. Some things may be abstract for the next 1 or 2 days, but everything is going to get clear as we keep progressing. Now, the advantage here is this points to all the digital assets available so that I can go and update my assets here. All I need to do is drag and drop this here. Okay, this makes sense, right? What is the significance of this content finder? Yeah, Gopi and Kavita.
Yes, yes. Yep.
In case I want to explore the videos available, all I need to do is go to these videos. I will show you where to upload the videos and all of that stuff. Okay, next. Now the next thing I want to talk about is, yeah, I changed this here. So when you look at the URL, I'm going to copy this path till the dot here. After the dot, what you will receive is the extension. Now when I copy this content path, paste it here, okay, and let's expand this node. We don't know who created this. We don't know anything about this, but the point I was trying to convey here is, when I expand this, okay, let's take out the title. So there is a property which says strategic development. Just modifying a property in the backend, instead of strategic, let's say training course, and save it. The moment, how do I save it? I just pressed a Control S and it saves everything for me, or I could also do a save all here. The point I'm trying to convey is, if I change a property value here, okay, this is the property name, which is JCR title, which has a value training course, and the data type is string here. The moment I do this, and if I refresh my page, right, do you see this? So the point that I'm going to add here is, my entire website right, is based on the nodes and properties. Okay, is based on the nodes, and every node has associated properties. So this is a node, this is a node, everything that you see here is a node. Everything is a node in JCR. Everything is a node in JCR. Okay. Now, Just changing a property changes the content of my website. Okay? This is about your JCR. Now, how to create these nodes, all of that we're going to look at it in depth. Okay, the first layer of AEM, when somebody asks you the architecture of AEM or the technology stack of AEM, right, you need to say the storage is based on the JCR, which is a hierarchical based storage where everything is in the form of nodes and properties. We have a root node and child nodes, and every node has associated properties. When I modify a node or a property, the same thing is reflected on my web page. Okay. And we are going to get into more depth in the further classes. This is the first layer. This is the storage layer. So no concept of database. This is gone. Next.
Okay.
So once the data is stored, right, because this is a website, this page is being made available to the end user. So whatever is stored in the backend, right, we know that in a Java J2W application, I can have a JDBC. But how is it that this JCR is getting rendered over the web? That is the question. So in AEM, we have something called as Sling. There is a second layer. Apache Sling. So this is all from Apache suite of products. So in the Apache Sling, this is a REST-based protocol to access the JCR over the web. So basically whatever is stored in the backend needs to be available to the user, right? It needs to be available in the view. So we use a layer called Sling here. The Sling is a REST-based protocol to access this JCR. When the end user fires a URL, he needs to get the data and render it on the view. So this Sling is a layer to access this JCR. Okay. So I am going to say is a REST-based protocol to access the JCR over the web. The way I call it is used to webify the content. Okay. This is the second layer. Now, just with these two layers, I can store nodes and how the nodes and properties are getting stored, we don't know yet. Okay? This is just a 10,000 foot view of the architecture. Now, once this happens, just having the data and the view is not sufficient, right? So when you work on large web applications, you may have upstream and downstream systems. Let's say I have something like a Salesforce, or I have a hybrid e-commerce system which I want to integrate, or I may have to make web service calls and fetch data from third-party sources. So in such cases, I may need to write a lot of Java. I need to write a lot of backend code and Java code. Right? Now, whenever you want to write any Java code in AEM, it is not possible directly. So we have something called, whenever you want to write Java code, we have a new layer called OSGI. OSGI stands for Open Service Gateway Initiative. Okay. So the idea with OSGI, whenever I write Java code, why has this OSGI been added, or what are the benefits? Okay, we will understand. So whenever you want to add OSGI code, whenever you want to write any Java code, you need OSGI. OSGI is a modular programming approach. What do I mean by modular programming approach? Right? My application can be divided into modules. Okay, or these modules can also be called bundles. Okay. What is a bundle is the question. What is a bundle? Okay. A bundle is a simple jar. What is a jar? Jar stands for Java archive. It is a collection of compiled classes. When you write some source code, you may want to generate the class files, and when you put all the class files together, you can pack it as a Java archive file. So it's a collection of compiled classes, interfaces, and so on. Okay. Now, what is a bundle? A bundle is a jar. Then what is the difference between a jar and a bundle? In a bundle, you would have additional metadata, which has information about what is metadata, information about something. Okay, so a bundle has a jar plus metadata. Now, which means now when I say my application, now if you remember again, OSGI is a specification. If OSGI is a specification, which implementation of OSGI is AEM using? This is the next question. AEM uses Apache Felix. Okay, you look at this. AEM is built out of all the open source technology stack. Apache Sling, Apache Jackrabbit. Right? And if you look at this is Apache Felix. Okay, OSGI. You know, Adobe charge close to 110K to 120K per instance per year. And in case you have, let's say, 3 instances with a few add-ons as well as the implementation, the cost itself would be close to $1 million per year. Okay, so but the entire product implementation is done using open source, so that's the beauty here. You get what I'm saying? Okay, so Apache. Hey guys, are you with me? Any disturbances?
Yep.
Great.
Yeah.
So
Yes, yes, we're
Apache
here.
Felix is the implementation of OSGI. So what is the benefit of this OSGI programming? Right? Now let's look at the console. How do I access the Felix console? So this is the one that I just spoke about in the beginning. To troubleshoot the instance, you access the Felix console. Localhost. So whenever you want to access any AEM URL, the syntax is HTTP server name, the port number.
Yeah.
HTTP. To access the Felix console, localhost /system/console. This is what you need to do. Now when I go to this /system/console, now my entire AEM is starting up because I have these 452 bundles. So this is a bundle, this is a bundle, this is a bundle. Every bundle has a ID. And like I said, every bundle is a jar plus metadata. So this has its own jar, log4j. This is a different aspect of my application. This is a different aspect of my application. Every bundle has an ID. The beauty of this here is every bundle can be started or stopped. Right? If in case I want to stop this, I do some code change and I just start this. Is there an advantage with this approach? Can you think of an advantage with this framework?
Oh, so I think if you have it modular, I think it's easier to troubleshoot as well, right?
Absolutely. It's easier to troubleshoot, and when you compare this to a typical Tomcat application or any application, any single line of code that you modify, you may have to redeploy to the server and restart the entire server.
Right, right.
Right?
Okay.
Here, every bundle has its own life cycle. That's what I write here. Has its own life cycle. Which means it runs independently. When I say it has its own life cycle, it has its own associated class loader. That is what enables every bundle. It has its own, every bundle has its own class loader, and this is what enables every bundle to be started or stopped. And this doesn't even require an entire web server restart when you want to deploy something. Okay, that's the beauty here. In case, let's assume I have a couple of teams. One team is working on the e-commerce integration and it would be Hybris here. Let's assume one team is working on a Salesforce CRM. So these teams would have separate bundles and nowhere is their work overlapping, and I could start or stop it, and I could have multiple versions of a bundle running. This is another important point. Okay. OSJ supports multiple versions of a bundle to be deployed in a container. So this way, let's assume you have some new features. You will have the old one running, and when the new one is ready, all you need to do is stop the old one and make the new one active. So that way, testing everything becomes easy. Right? So that's the reason every bundle has a name here. It has an ID. It has a status. You could stop it. All you need to do is just say stop. You could refresh. So again, when I talk about a bundle, it has Java code, and in Java I know that I can have packages, so I can refresh all my package input. So we are going to have a detailed session on OSGI in the future, and I can also uninstall this. Right? I can also uninstall this. Now, do you guys understand this? So this is the OSGI. This is the
Yes, yes.
architecture or the technology stack of AEM. Now the next point I want to convey is there are two kinds of views in AEM. Very important. Are you guys aware of that?
Two types of what, sorry?
Two types of views. One is the classic UI and one is the touch UI.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you like to talk about that?
Like I think in AEM 5.6 it has only the classic UI. 6.2 comes along the UI.
Okay. That's correct.
So and
So
it's easy for and it's easy for us to drag and drop the components and
correct. So you can drag and drop on
it's
both
pretty
the versions.
useful.
So the primary difference is, okay. So let me add this here. There are two kinds of views in AEM. One is the classic UI, or it is the legacy UI. Okay, this has been the legacy one. So starting from when day started from version 3.5, the same view has been carried forward in all the versions. So this is called classic UI. So this is a non-responsive framework. That's the main difference. And the second one is the touch UI. What is this touch UI? Why is it called touch UI? So basically, this has been introduced starting from version 5.6.1 onwards. Okay. Primary advantage is this gives you a responsive framework for authors, which means let's assume I have authors who wants to use mobile devices for authoring, right? When you have mobile devices for authoring, you could use touch UI, okay? But this is a non-responsive. So the difference is localhost 4502. Now let's say I don't remember any URL in AEM. How do I work with it? Just remember the index page, which is welcome.html. So this is called as the index page. So this will, you can navigate to anything in AEM just by knowing this one URL. So let's add this. So in the legacy view, right, you see a green background. So it's usually based on this green background. And remember, these are non-responsive framework. It's unresponsive framework. So it looks like this. Okay. So when I scroll this, right, on my mobile devices, when you have websites which are not responsive, you would see this horizontal scroll bar here. There's a messy scroll bar. So this design is a very legacy one. So to replace this, Adobe introduced a new one called Touch UI. The same index page, okay, you have the light green backgrounds. The same one on Touch will be localhost 4502 slash projects.html. Now, all I need to do here is localhost 4502 projects.html. Now I do this. Okay. If you see, right, you would see everything in black color. This has a black background. The reason Adobe introduced this is when we talk about the Adobe Marketing Cloud, right, we have 6 solutions: the Adobe Analytics, we have the Adobe Target, we have the Adobe Experience Manager, and a couple of other solutions. So Adobe thought of having a common framework or a common look and feel for all these marketing solutions. So they have something called, so this classic UI, this is based on the EXTJS framework. Okay, EXTJS framework, which is based on the Sencha JavaScript framework. However, this Touch UI is based on Coral UI. There is Adobe's own framework called Coral UI. Now, this is the primary difference. The reason is it's a common look and feel across all the Adobe Marketing Cloud solutions. Okay. Now, if you look at this, this is a responsive framework, which means when I resize my device, right, I can see that everything is adjusting itself, right? You see, this is a 2-column grid. This becomes a single column grid, right? Everything is adjusting. So this is a touches. So any mobile device, there's no concept of this horizontal scroll bar at all here. Okay. You guys with me? You understand this?
Yes.
Great.
Yep.
Okay, so this is the difference between Touch UI and Classic UI. Now the same page, okay, on this is a Classic UI. Whatever you're seeing now is a Classic UI. The same page would look, and the same page on. So again, if you look at this, when you look at the dialog structure, right, this is a dialog. You have a dialog box, right? This is a tab, and these are widgets. So these are all based on the EXTJS framework. Now the same dialog, in case I want the same page, in case I want to open on the Touch UI, all I need to do here is add the editor.html, and it opens up the page in Touch UI. And in Touch UI, look at this, you have a black background, the dialogs and everything changes here. Now if I double click the dialog, a dialog pops up here. Okay, everything changes. In case, let's say I want to edit this guy, everything changes here. Yeah, so this is your Touch UI, right? Everything is resizable here. The dialogues are resizable. So basically, only the authoring framework is different. The dialogue, everything is different. So this is based on the. So now, we are going to look at the site, how to create dialogues for touch UI, how to create it on classic UI. The development effort is different for different UIs, okay, which we are going to discuss in the future. At a high level, I want you to understand all this. Apart from this, we've understood the architecture, we understood the ways of starting the server. In fact, I've already added this here. Anyway, let that remain. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk about the advantages of JCR and all of that stuff. I'll stop it at this point. Yeah, I can take if you have any specific questions, and if not, I'll allow you time to go through the recording again.